Hey guys, Jono here from Ecom SEO. Crawl budget for Shopify stores. Just quickly, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button below, or head on over to our free private Facebook group where there's plenty of discussion going on over there about Shopify and Shopify SEO. In this video, I just wanted to talk about crawl budget and crawl stats. It's one of the things that probably not a lot of Shopify store owners actually even know. It's something you should monitor, and one of the reasons for that is the crawl stats tab has actually been removed in the new Google Search Console, but it's actually still there. So all you need to do is actually be able to find it. So I'm just going to walk through what crawl budget is, why you should need to worry about it, and then some of the things you need to just monitor if you believe you've got issues. So if you come on over here on the left-hand side of Google Search Console, if you scroll on down to legacy tools, you can see here are the crawl stats here. So you can just click on crawl stats and it shows you the crawl stats here. So the main one you want to keep note of, well, they're all important, but the main one you want to just sort of keep an eye on month to month is your crawl stats. It's not always such a big issue for smaller Shopify stores where there's not a lot of pages that Google needs to crawl, but it can have implications when you've got a store with tens of thousands of products or hundreds of thousands of products and collections. The reason being is the Google bot and the algorithm and the way the Google bots work, they're only allocated, they've only got enough resources to crawl sites on a regular basis. So if your site is not efficient for the bots to crawl and the bots come through and they get stopped or they find errors everywhere, chances are they're just going to stop crawling the site and go somewhere else. And then they're also not going to come back as frequently when they see that the site is not as of high quality. So you want to make sure that so that's what we call a crawl budget. So you want to make sure that your crawl budget is optimized and the bots are doing everything possible to crawl as much of your site as possible, and especially the pages you want crawled for many different reasons, for obviously indexing new products, new collections, new pages, updating the ranking algorithms, etc. So the more optimized your crawl budget, the better performance you're going to get from your Shopify store. Now, generally, an efficient and optimized store will have a reasonably consistent pages crawled per day, and even a little bit of an increase per day. So this graph here, you can see it's just continued to increase a little bit of a plateau, tiny bit of a pullback, but it's reasonably stable. You don't really want to see big peaks or big troughs. Big peaks can occur when you resubmit the site map, for example, and the Google bots come to the store and actually try and crawl the entire site again. But if you start to see this crawl budget dropping off and it's the Google bot starting to decrease the number of pages it's actually crawling per day, chances are there may be an issue with your site somewhere. And generally what we find when we actually optimize our crawl budget as best as possible, certainly on big stores, you'll get much better performance, an increase in traffic overall, which obviously converts to just better performance of your store overall. So this is one area to look at. And I think the reason probably it's now in this other section and not in the new Google Search Console, because Google actually provides a lot more granular data on where those problems are. But we still like to keep an eye on this because it does give an indication on where a store status is actually at. So, for example, if you've got a store that has 100,000 products and you're only managing to get, say, 10,000 of those products indexed consistently, coming over your crawl budget, you might see that only a small number of pages relative to the size of your store is actually getting crawled per day. So there's a problem with the site somewhere where the Google bots actually are inefficient. And it can be inefficient for a number of reasons. So maybe you've got no index pages that shouldn't be indexed, so they've got a no index tag on them. You've got pages that are not loading properly. They're very, very slow, and the Google bot's just going to come. If the page doesn't render quickly enough, it's just going to go away. So you're not, and then you get that low quality score on that page, and they're not going to come back to it in a hurry. Shopify, as we know, can create a lot of duplicate content. So with tag pages, for example, and if you haven't set up the canonicals correctly, or what tends to happen is if you just leave the native Shopify setup and you do have tag pages for filters, etc., and you've got that duplicate content, Google actually sees that as duplicate content. You won't necessarily get a penalty, but they're going to consider it duplicate content and lower the quality of the site overall. And it actually will just ignore a lot of that duplicate content as well. And then what it does, if you've got all these pages, is extra pages that are duplicate content that Google's tending to ignore, it's not the most efficient way for Google to be crawling your site because it doesn't need to be. So these are some of the reasons why your crawl budget may be not optimized. So here we can see on this one, we've got a server error. So, and I know I've clicked through to that and it's actually not a server error anymore. So that'll resolve itself. Some of these errors you can actually validate the fixes. You want to check 404s. So this particular one, we've validated the fix. So all we did was, it was a collection page, a product page that went out of stock, and the product was removed from the store. So there was no URL anymore. So there's a 404. So if the Googlebot comes through that page, it's going to see that 404. It's inefficient. So now what we've done is actually redirected with a 301 redirect that product to the most relevant product in that same collection. So now there's no 404 error. Once this validates, this error will be gone. You can look at the valid with warnings. Now, because we don't have access to the robots TXT on Shopify, you're always going to get this warning. The way the robot TXT is actually set up in Shopify, it's the way it's going to be. And then you've got your valid pages. So you want this relatively close to the amount of products you've got in your store. I know this particular store has reduced its product range. So the fact that this graph has actually come down is actually fine, because we know the valid pages and the number of products is actually reduced to where it was previously. So that looks all good. And then we've got all our excluded pages as well. So excluded pages are going to be things like your canonical URLs. So all your double product pages where you've got a collection URL. So it's Shopify store / collection name, product name, and then that's the same as your / product URL. So that's standard Shopify setup. It's standard with a canonical, and that's where a lot of these are sitting here. Crawl anomaly, you want to check those. Some of those, there's all different reasons why there might be a crawl anomaly. Things, again, like 404s, server errors. I know this particular store has the vendor tags, so a lot of the vendor products are actually indexed in Google, so they actually need to be, the canonical tag set are actually set to no index. So there's some of the issues you need to deal with. And then obviously you just want to check that all your no index, if you've got no index tags set, that they're actually correct. On this particular store, the majority of these no index tags are actually tag pages. Check all your redirects are correct, and you've got no redirects, and you want to minimize redirect chains as much as possible. And then we've got some more here. Again, some more soft 404s, just want to check what they are. So make sure that they're set up correctly, either with a redirect or completely removed from the store, so they are meant to be going to the correct 404 pages. Soft 404 is essentially where Google's noticed a 404, but they don't believe it should be a 404. And then obviously it starts to bring in some other notifications here. So duplicate without user selected canonical. So you want to check that, and if it needs a canonical tag, you can add that, or just set it up correctly so it's set up the right way. So the bottom line is you need to make sure you keep an eye on your coverage issues, deal with them as much as possible, and continue to optimize your the errors and any warnings that are there, and understand the structure of your site. So Google can crawl your site in the most efficient way and won't come up against any roadblocks that actually stop it crawling or send it away. And so you've got your coverage issues section, and you've also got your crawl stats and your crawl budget graph, which is still in the legacy tools section of Google Search Console. Okay, hope that was helpful. I'll catch you next video.